Kyle's on the phone out there in the
Yeah.
hallway.
I guess we'll go ahead and get started and call the meeting to order. Call the roll, please, Amanda.
Alt,
Here.
Barr,
Here,
Apple,
Here.
Sure,
Yep. A motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
second.
Mr. Bard. Is there any questions or comments regarding the agenda? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, that motion passes. Do we have any public comments this morning? Do we have any public here? Committee chair reports. Mr. Barron's Management Committee.
Pretty much just regular reports and working on the dog building. That's the main thing.
Okay, what about judicial?
That'll be regular reports.
Okay, Mrs. Awful, Health Committee.
Yes, we'll have our regular reports along with animal control.
All right, Mr. Bard, tax and zoning.
Regular reports from the different departments, and committee has 2 zoning variances to vote on.
Those were from the other evening,
Beg pardon?
the other
Yeah.
evening.
Yeah, last Tuesday.
Very good. Mr. Rawl, Highway.
I'll move the report on to Mr. Moore, who has a lot of excitement things to tell you.
Mr. Moore.
As far as the meeting, our regular meeting is just gonna be the normal, report and claims. I do, as a few know in here, I don't know who all knows, not this Monday, but the Monday previous to that, the highway department was broken into the same night as the Fastenal, and they stole all our 18-volt Milwaukee tools. So, I've got quotes and actually I went ahead and gonna use the same, company that the sheriff's office uses for cameras, so we're gonna have to cover the doorways, and so at least we have an idea, next time it happens.
Is that loss covered by insurance?
Oh, we're about $4,000 short of our deductible, or $400, it's yeah, $400 short of our deductible. So basically, no, $4,600 worth of tools to replace.
Okay, chairman comments. Usually I don't have a whole lot to say, but today I'm gonna get on my soapbox about something that's come up recently that I'm not really sure that I know at this point what the right direction is, but it's something I need to talk about, and that is broadband. Right now, there's a company called Nextlink that has formed an alliance with Eastern Illini, and they wanna come into the county. They're a Texas-based company. And they wanna come into the county and install fiber and wireless both, I guess, to cover some large areas in the county that they claim don't have internet service. And that claim is, I guess you have to preface that claim with, in spite of the fact that Illinois is having financial problems, we have a governor that likes to spend money anyway. And they've developed a program called Connect Illinois, where they're giving money away. Nextlink is applying for some of that money. They've applied for some of our ARPA money, $2 million to be exact, or they haven't applied, but they said they'd like to get that. I guess at the same time that they've made these statements, they're saying that they really don't need the money, they're gonna go ahead with the project anyway. And earlier this past week, I received an email from the Netlink representative wanting the county to endorse their application for that they're making for these Connect Illinois funds. And I refuse to do that. and refuse to do it primarily on the grounds that I don't have the authority to do that without the advice and consent of the board. But in my mind, the issue goes a little bit deeper. And to me, I think it's time that some of us make a stand on issues where taxpayer monies are being used to fund private entities. And what's even more important, when an entity comes along and says they really don't need the money, but they're applying for it, if we're stupid enough to give them the money when they don't need it,
Yeah.
it really says an awful lot about, what we really are. And so, I'm taking the stand that I'm not gonna approve that if they come to this board seeking any further approvals of their applications. I'm not be in favor of it at all. That being said, I wanna go on the record as saying that I'm a strong advocate for broadband and a strong advocate for improving it. Whether it needs to be brought up to the level that the governor says can be debated. To me, it could be like taking a car that can go 500 miles an hour, but you can only drive it 50 miles an hour on the road. That may not be a good comparison, but I just can't understand why we have to have these huge capabilities for broadband. I know there are people in the county right now whose service is not as good as it could be, but they have access to services that are good. They just either can't afford or don't want to spend the money to access them. And I think that's a big part of the picture that needs to be understood. So I just want to take the opportunity to make my views known on this issue because it may come up further down the road. We'll just have to wait and see. But if you have any questions, you're free to ask me now or talk to me later about it. So that's the sum and substance of what I have to talk about today. Next, we'll move on to the EMA report by Mr. EMA himself, Eric Sasey.
Is that the new title? Can I get that on name tag, Mr. EMA?
Mhm.
If you wanna pay for it out of your own pocket, you can.
Ooh, okay, never mind, we'll talk about some of the expenses over there. Well, over the past month, things I've done, went to an IEMA Region 7 meeting in Decatur on the 3rd of March. That's a quarterly meeting that I go to, where other EMAs throughout the region attend, and we go over upcoming state mandates or improvements that we need to make, or just share what we've each been doing. So did that. The state hazard mitigation officer wanted to meet with me in Paxton on the 14th of March to go over the pending grant that we've been applying for to get a hazard mitigation plan. They were meeting with Ford County on the same day, so it was just, hey, can you meet us there? So I met with them, we had a good discussion, and over the next week or two, I finished the sub-application for Iroquois County for a grant to write the hazard mitigation plan. And actually already finished it for them, but then they sent it back to me with revisions I need to make. So revisions have been made, it's been submitted, and then they sent it back again, and then made more revisions, and it's been submitted. So I haven't heard back from them, so I'm assuming that they're happy with the sub-application that turned in. From here, when it comes to acquiring that grant, I call it a sub-application because the state is then going to collect all these sub-applications throughout other counties and entities in Illinois, and then collect that and put it into an application and send that to FEMA. After that, it takes FEMA about 45 days to approve or deny it. So I am expecting probably 2 months before I hear back on whether or not that whole thing's been approved. With that being said, IEMA has high confidence that it will be approved. And I have a template request for proposal to put out for a contractor to write the plan. So that's where we're at in terms of hazard mitigation plan.
Do they have a certain amount of money set aside for approving this kind of thing?
The grant application is for, I think, $57,000.
Or does IEMA have a certain amount of money in their budget for this kind of thing?
Yes, and that's actually a good detail that I almost glazed over, thank you. They're applying for federal funds, which would be 75% federal funds, 25% is usually locally matched. IEMA has guaranteed me that Iroquois County will not have to come up with that 25%. That IEMA is going to come up with that 25%, and that's in writing in the sub-application. So thankfully, Iroquois County is not gonna have to come up with any of the funds for this. Previously, I was going to have to try to do that in kind, in terms of time and mileage and so on and so forth like that, so we wouldn't have to put any hard dollars to this, but this makes the whole process a lot easier. A majority of the funds are looking to be federal. That's the great application.
Okay, part of my question then is our likelihood of getting this approved dependent on federal approval? Or are we competing with other counties in the state for a certain amount of money?
We are not competing with other counties in the state for a certain amount of money. The state is competing with other states for federal funds.
Okay, so if we don't get, the state doesn't get the money, we don't get anything.
Correct.
Okay. Go ahead with your report. I'm sorry for interrupting.
No, it's a good question. Thank you for asking. Over the past month, we've gained access to a few different communication systems. GETS, or GETS, and WPS, or WEPS. These are two different forms of phone call systems that, in an emergency, will prioritize the traffic that is put into those systems. Often in disasters, cellular networks or even landlines can be overloaded with traffic. And these two systems will allow EMA to get our necessary phone calls through, so we can actually communicate with those that we need to. So that was a nice little thing to get accomplished. We have, a couple months ago, we got our Starcom 21 radio that we got donated into the Suburban, and it was having problems, but we got the company that donated to us to come up, take a look at it, repair the issues, and it's functioning. So it's been a long-term goal of ours to get a Starcom 21 radio in the Suburban and in our office, and now we have that, so I'm happy about that. And we got a WinLink radio. WinLink radio is another alternative form of radio/email communication that's meant to be a backup, maybe even a backup to the backup should most other things fail. There was a gap in this area of Illinois in the WinLink system, so we were able to get that donated to us by the people that run it. And later on, it's connected to the internet, and later on, it's going to be, we've got some long-term plans to get a radio, another antenna on the roof, if that's possible. And then we'll have another backup communication system should other communications fail in a catastrophic event. So that is the majority of what EMA is working on.
Very good. Any questions?
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to a discussion on security at the administration building. Maybe a timely topic in view of what Mr. Moore just told us a few minutes ago. On the 14th of this month, following the ARPA meeting, I had a small meeting in my office with Mrs. Offal and Mr. Raymond, and they voiced some of their concerns about security in the building. And as a result of that discussion, I placed it on the agenda today. As far as I'm concerned, it's an open topic for anybody that has any views that they'd like to express on the issue, pro or con, and as to what level or what measures, if any, we ought to be thinking about taking. So we'll start with Mrs. Zuber.
I actually asked for a executive session at management regarding security in the building. I had a physical security assessment done by the Department of Homeland Security, which was free to my office, but they looked at the entire building and have suggestions, so I was gonna address that with the management committee. I don't wanna talk about their suggestions and things like that in open session, so, I just wanted to give you a heads up that we were gonna talk about that.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments they'd wanna make about the matter? I would
Well,
say
I
that
just-
one thing that, on that particular day, Mrs. Awful was riding in the car with me, and when we left, I drove around the building and pointed out there are 13 exterior doors on this building, which is an awful lot when you're considering security, and, you know, then you have the issue that how many people have keys to enter the building after it's been locked up? And that's an issue that's always a concern, because if somebody has some evil intentions, shall we say, and happens to possess a key, they can easily have duplicates made, and when they turn their key in, when they're no longer officially here, they still have an opportunity to access the building unless we go to the expense of changing the locks every time something like that happens, which we have never done, as far as I know. But I guess part of what we need to consider in the matter is what kind of incidents we may have had in the past. And if somebody were to break into the building after hours, what is there in the building that they might wanna take? I guess there are computers. There may be a couple of places where there might be a little bit of money, but I don't know we have a great deal of money in the building that's attractive to anybody. And really, outside of the computers, I'm not sure what else we have here that somebody would wanna steal or whatever.
Except vandalize.
Oh,
If they wanna vandalize, that's an option. It's also a building that is very easy to stay in after hours. There's places in the building where a person can hide themselves when the building is locked up. And after everyone has gone home, they can wander around and again access the building, so.
Well, my concern was that day when we rode around and saw all the doors, how many are locked during the day? You know, people go out and they smoke and then come back in, is the door locked again, or, I mean, anybody can just walk through those doors. It'd be simple to lock it when you go back in.
I'll be honest, in addition to what you were talking about, after hours security of the actual building, so if somebody were intent on stealing or vandalizing, I also look at it on the aspect of the safety and security of the employees during the day. There's lots of opportunities, especially when you are already talking about an open door. We do have a regular open public access doors available. Anybody intent on harm or again vandalism or stealing can still walk through those doors. Probably a little harder to steal something during the day, but it can happen.
Well, I'm sure we probably all or many of us have experienced instances where some member of the public has come in and unhappy about something, and they sort of become abusive in their language or in their actions. I don't know that it's ever escalated into anything real serious, but the potential is there. I had a gentleman one time in my office that came close to that. You know, I could see where somebody loses control of themselves, there could be some issues, but again, what measures can be taken to overcome that or prevent that from happening?
essentially 11 of those 13 doors can be closed, or should be closed and locked. There can be an electronic access, with a key fob or a card. We've got that at the courthouse, even in the clerk's office and the state's attorney's office. You have to have a fob to enter into any further than the small waiting area. I think that's a good option. I think cameras in the hallways are a good option. I don't think you necessarily need to have cameras in the offices. I think some office holders would agree on that. We do have panic buttons over at the courthouse. I know the judges have panic buttons. And once that's pushed, that goes to dispatch.
That goes over the radio.
And that's something that we have to test and go through. But that is also a good option.
We have panic buttons here in these offices as well.
I mean, that's, besides that, I mean, you really can't, it's a public access building unless you wanna have a person posted at the door. It's really difficult to.
You can make an argument, this is the people's building, and it needs to be made for their access and use.
Yeah.
So.
What is,
And protection for them too, when they come in.
Sure.
what is the cost of the fobs and installation of the compatible locks and everything for a door?
I can ask Lisa Hines to see how much it cost her, because she has a half door on both of her offices, the entrances.
I can tell you, I just got a quote,
Okay.
for three doors with the key fob system was $9,000.
How much?
9,000, about 3,000 a door.
Now that's a server and all the equipment.
That's complete. And that also included the additional, pry guards, I guess, which you'd call them, around the deadbolts where they can't get a crowbar in, which is how they accessed ours. And the nice thing about that is you can also attach that to an alarm system. So if somebody enters that door without a key fob, then the alarm will go off.
I was also going to suggest going into our FY23 budget to the management committee that our panic button system here in this building does have a need for some upgrades. That system's 20 plus years old. If it were to fail tomorrow, we would be dead in the water. There's no boards or anything to replace it. The individual that originally set it up has long since been retired.
So, can I just suggest that maybe anybody that's got any concerns or suggestions come to the management meeting? Because as she pointed out, it's probably not a good idea to talk about this in an open meeting.
There's some minimums that I've kind of got my line where I'm not going to discuss, like specifics of what and where, for example. So I agree with you in that.
I don't have, if we wanna relegate it to the management committee, I don't have any problems with that. I think that may be the right thing to do, but.
Well, since we're already got it on the agenda, I assume,
Yes.
so we may as well. Since we're gonna be discussing it anyway, we'll just,
Yep.
anybody with concerns, let us know, and we can take it into account.
I agree.
Okay.
I'll leave it there and move on. Next thing we got is discussion and action on setting salaries for officials to be elected on November 8th, 2022. I believe we need to try and get this done today, so that it can be approved at our April board meeting. I think if we wait till the May meeting, we may not make the 180-day requirement. I didn't count the calendar days, but we'd be cutting it awful close even if we would, so. I think this is something we need to get resolved today. I guess it's somewhat of a difficult issue because inflation, if you're gonna tie any of it to inflation, we're looking at some pretty staggering numbers right now in this country for inflation.
It's gonna get worse.
It's supposed to get better in a couple of years, but this year and next year is probably gonna be pretty bad, so. I think we need to understand that part of it, but I think we also need to bear in mind the constraints that the county's finances have. We keep encountering issues and things that are gonna cost more money all the time. Sometimes I marvel at how we've been able to find enough money to cover them, but I'm not sure how long we can play that game and get away with it. But nevertheless, the other thing that, I don't know how significant it is, but I thought I'd mention it just so that everybody understands. I think that, I've felt all along that the salary schedules that we have for our elected officials are appropriate. But one thing that happens if in any way we compare their salaries with the employees under their domain, is that if you give everybody a raise of the same percentage, you're widening the gap between your highest paid and your lowest paid, because percentages don't work out that way. If you wanna maintain some kind of a relationship there, then you can't use percentages. You've gotta come up with a different approach.
So are these,
I'm not saying that I advocate one thing or the other, I'm just mentioning that so we understand that that's something that exists.
so are these two different proposals for the salary then? And one's on a percentage basis?
Those are numbers that you'll put together just as a guide, they're not recommendations at all.
But one works
I'm
on
not sure that we
percentages
wanna
and the other
follow
is a
on
flat
that,
increase.
Yeah, the first box is what their current, looks like, and then the proposed salary box is, the first one is a percentage. The second one is with a flat rate, so I can adjust those however, you would like to see them adjusted.
Also, what I think we might wanna contemplate and do is on the circuit clerk salary to just do that for the next 2 years. That would get her back on the 4-year rotation with the state's attorney in the coroner.
And that's when she's elected?
Right. If we look at the numbers that are on this sheet, Jill, do you have any comments or thoughts as to how compatible they would be with our budgets going forward?
I don't at this moment. Not until just looking at some of the numbers that are gonna have to increase for the, specifically AFSCME contract.
Well, there again is another area where a lot of things are up in the air. There's a bill down in Springfield right now that the unions are pushing that's gonna really throw things out of whack with all of our unions. It's ridiculous what they're asking to do. The unions are gonna have the right to bargain on any issue they want. They're gonna have a lot more power in every area that they exist. It's hard to say what that's gonna mean in terms of dollars and cents for the county. I think that the county employees here have been very reasonable heretofore, but there's no guarantee that some business agent might come in and put a bug in their ear, and we might get all kinds of demands and so forth. It seems like, or even now, every year when we negotiate a new contract, there's always some new thing that gets put in there, some new fringe benefit or whatever, along with the usual 5% increase in wages, so. It's really gonna be hard for us to know what kind of an impact some of that's gonna have on our finances as well. And I guess we can paint a bleak picture as much as we want to. On the other hand, I think we're saddled with having to set up a salary schedule for 4 years, and we can't really tell what's gonna happen going forward. So it's not an easy decision to make, but it's one we have to make. Good?
I have a few things I would like to hand out if that'd be okay.
Okay.
Sorry. This is something that I kind of started on a few weeks ago. When I first came into this position, I knew a lot of the duties, but I didn't know all of them. And there's been a lot of things that have come up that you know, I want to write down as far as the things that I do daily and the things that this position is responsible for. So I don't need to go into great verbal detail. Everything is on paper there in front of you, and I just ask for your consideration in all that. If you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to entertain them.
What do you see your prospect of you? Are the deputy salaries going to continue to increase at a terrible rate like they have been?
I don't know, a terrible rate.
Well-
I think they're gonna come into negotiations and they're gonna ask for, you know, a normal amount, you know, a 3%. You know, I do understand, you know, inflation, and that's hurting everybody, but the proposal that's in front of you, that would kind of keep pace with things, as the chairman had alluded to, and that would kind of keep things equitable in that office. So again, it's not an enormous amount over top of what the lieutenant would make, but it would be good if the supervisor, the sheriff, at least made as much as the lieutenant is, knowing that all the responsibilities and the liabilities that I have in that office, and all the different things that I have underneath me, as far as the jail investigations, patrol, records.
I guess we've, this is maybe an example of how we've gotten ourselves into a real bind with some of the things that have happened with the union contracts over the years, where it comes back to bite you. This business about the sheriff's, sergeants and the lieutenants' salaries isn't anything new. Eric pointed that out to us on a couple of occasions over the last number of years. And that was one of the things that he also was using as justifying, increases for himself. I guess you could make the argument that two wrongs don't make a right. I'm not sure that applies here. I think you could make the argument that the sheriff's salary should be more than any of the people he supervises. I would not disagree with that. But the bottom line is, what kind of money do we have and what can we afford? I think that's some of that is an unknown for us, and I think that's a big part of what I've been alluding to thus far in our conversation this morning.
Sure.
And I think, all things considered, I think that one of the things that I would not wanna see happen is something similar to what happened 12 years ago. I think we wanna avoid that at all costs. So how do we do all that is the task that we have to look at here. And unfortunately, if the state allowed us to give bonuses or some incentive deal, we could probably solve the problem pretty quickly.
Sure.
But they don't, so.
But by addressing this issue now and keeping pace with that, it's easier than in 4 years, now what do you do? Now you've gotta make up even more. And again, in 4 years, is there a sergeant or a lieutenant or somebody within the office that's going to be, one, qualified for this position, but wanting to take this position, knowing that they're gonna take a pay cut and have all those duties and the liabilities of that. So and those are just thoughts that I came up with, and,
I've made the statement at several board meetings already that some of these things are not sustainable going forward. At some point in time, we're gonna hit a brick wall. I mean, unless you can say that you can continue inflation and the devaluation of money indefinitely, I mean, it's a false economy in a lot of ways. And if you can keep doing that indefinitely, maybe you could make it work, but I don't think you can. I think at some point in time, you're gonna hit a brick wall and say, hey, $1 today is only worth a penny. What happens where do you go from less than a penny?
Your proposal shows a bigger jump the first year, which I understand why you would do that, but, what if we took and ended up at the same place but divided it equally through the 4 years? Would that be something that would be, or do you feel that it's necessary to take the bigger jump the first year?
I mean, I don't know how it would work out, better for the county if we did a bigger jump further down the road. I think that would be,
well, I mean,
it would be a harder pill to swallow, but
no.
at least kick the can down.
Instead of, I would say you got twice as much approximately of a jump in the first year as the others. If you had the same amount on the final year, but just split it more evenly between them.
Yeah, I think that would be workable, definitely. And
it still
again,
gets you there, it just takes you longer to get there.
Sure. And again, you're helping ease the pain of keeping pace in that sense. So sure.
Now, are there any other departments that are having issues with their people getting close to what? No, okay. It's mostly just the sheriff's. Yours is getting that way?
I've got one with quite a few years of
But-
service.
But you're not setting his salary.
Yeah, you're an
You don't set
employee,
my
so,
salary, so you don't have to worry.
For the
about
ones
me.
that you're talking about, no.
okay. year on this year, but instead of going, look at that. Right now, that's his salary. Or, where, about here. So instead of that jump all at once, you go from that to that, but spread it evenly over the 4 years. So we still get there, it just takes longer to get there. But not exceedingly long.
Yeah, I mean, as long as it's equitable, you know, between the lieutenant sergeant and the sheriff. You know, cause they get the holiday pay and the overtime on top of their salary, which is almost as much as what I make now. There was January and February, there was a time where, I think the sergeant made, $3,000 more than what the sheriff did, in that month. And the lieutenant made almost $1,400 more.
You're probably not gonna get away from that if they have overtime though.
Right. But at least if it's more equitable, I'm not asking for overtime.
We can't give you overtime.
Well, yeah. And like I put on there, I'm not the typical 40-hour-a-week employee. A lot of times if you drive by the office at 6:30 at night, you're gonna see my vehicle there. On a holiday, you may see my vehicle there.
Okay. These you also get a stipend from the state, is that correct?
Do you wanna speak of that in connection with the salary? Cause I think by statute, we're not allowed.
But if you're weighing what you make compared to what your deputies make.
So that's maybe not something that's allowed in an open meeting.
Yeah.
I don't believe so. Which,
I'm not familiar with that aspect of it.
and that's taxed as well, so it's actually less than what the stipend actually is. And that doesn't come from the county, but I know there's $2,500 built into the budget to offset any monies that the county would have to put in to IMRF to offset that, so that's already taken care of.
My point in asking that question though is that additional amount something that if you're gonna compare your salary with your employees, that should be included or taken into account.
Sure.
But then on the other hand, when you look at what he's proposing, it gets him to just above the lieutenant salaries at regular salary without overtime.
Correct. So even if that stipend, that wouldn't even compare to the amount of overtime money that lieutenant would get throughout the year, because, I mean, it's honestly, it ends up being like $3,500, that stipend.
It's just a matter of point if that should be included in our
Legally,
evaluations here and
legally, I don't believe it can.
It can't be taken into consideration when you're setting his salary. So like, it has to show up on the ordinance or resolution that you guys pass. But for like circuit clerk, county clerk, sheriff, it's all written in statute that the stipend can't be, like, you can't raise or lower our salaries because of the stipend. Like, it can't be, I suppose it can be considered as a total package, but it can't be considered if you're giving us a raise or not.
Well, my intention was considering it as a part of the total package. I think I made that clear, at least I hope I did. But I'm just mentioning it for the benefit of the committee that we.
Right, but that will have to show up on the ordinance that you guys pass, what the total compensation is for each of us. So what the salary is, then what the stipend amount is.
Well, I think at this time, since we are going, if we do decide to adjust the sheriff's salary, then percentages would not be, percentages wouldn't be a good way to do it, because then you'd have different ones being raised at different percentages, and that gets, so the flat rate, then we, you know, do we do them all at the same flat rate? Well, you can't if you're going to adjust the sheriff's salary. So,
Now,
and all our elected officials are so happy with their jobs, they don't care about the money.
No.
Yeah.
Don't be putting words in our mouth.
I mean, other than the ones that have to deal with me, then, you know, they probably deserve more.
I have made the point to numerous individuals that there are other people and county employees that I think are also greatly underpaid. As far as the salaries for the individuals we're considering here, I don't harbor any reason as to why they shouldn't get paid more. The question is, do we have the money to do it? That's, you know, we're the stewards of the taxpayers' money, and that's what we have to keep in mind. What do we have to work with, and how are we gonna work with it? How are we gonna do things? I'm not sure all of the things that went into the problems that developed 12 years ago, but some of this may well have been a part of it. Being a little too optimistic can backfire sometimes. By the same token, like I said, yeah, you wanna talk about people that are underpaid, I can get on my soapbox for a while, if you'd like. We've had that conversation already, but nevertheless, it is what it is. And I think Lyle's suggestion of making it an even progression over the years probably is a good way to approach it. The only question would be if you want to bring it up to the level that the sheriff is asking. And then you have to consider what you're gonna do for the other three.
If we vote on something today, are we voting on next year's salary or this whole plan for all down the road?
It is for 4 years, because they're
The
elected.
next 4 years after this year, 2023, 24, 25, and 26.
We have to deal with that right at this time,
Yes.
all those salaries to that point.
We have to establish their salaries 180 days before the next election.
Oh, I see. In other words, it's only done every 4 years, or
And
2 years,
so-
whatever it depends on.
So we have to do that this month if we're gonna comply with that requirement. Or else we'll be faced with calling a special board meeting somewhere between now and whatever it is, the 8th or 9th of May to get it done. I don't wanna do that.
I think you can do it at the May meeting.
I didn't count it on the calendar, but if we did it, it'd be cutting it awful close.
It would be cutting it close, but I think you can until the May meeting. I don't remember for sure.
May 12th is the date.
And the May meeting is what day?
May 12th is 180 days before the next election?
If Clint counted it out right. I know I counted it out. I think that we had until the May meeting.
Still be wise to get it done before.
But
You could amend
getting
it
it
if
done.
you had another change on it, couldn't you?
Well,
Well-
yeah, it's best if we try to get something now, just in case somebody kicks it back and
We had
We've had a problem
a lot of
before.
arguments
Yeah.
2 years ago when we were doing this, so, and 4 years ago as well, so, yeah, it would be better.
Too long or something.
You know, I brought it up last month so that we could start thinking about it and we'd be aware of it. I'm not sure how much of that got accomplished, but here we are today.
Well, with the proposed flat rate, from what I figure, you're probably looking at just, for at least, 2 clerks and the treasurer, you're basically keeping up with inflation, I think, unless inflation goes
I don't know what you guys have in front of you.
What I figured, it's about a 2.5%, I think. So, which in the past has been inflation rate, who knows that?
May 10th is about 173 days.
May 7th. Google told me it was May 12th a while back.
I thought it
I
had
may have
come
come
up.
Port line for us, and look
It's
at
before
bottom
they
one
take office,
accumulated.
right? I think is what the
Cost.
statute says.
In other words, it goes up 30,000 by the end of this period we're voting on.
Yeah, I believe
That's,
it's before they
yeah,
take
that's,
office.
you know, what I'm saying, are we gonna have that kind of
Yeah,
money
so,
available?
December first, so that's what's gonna be.
I think the board's had a pretty good record since the time I've been on it, in managing the finances of the county. We've been in the black every year, and I think that's something we wanna continue. I don't think there's any reason to go in the other way. You start going in the red, and that's a deep sink.
Hard to get out.
Yes, but if we do not pay a good enough wage, then you end up with, like, the state's attorney's office and some of the others over there, that they train the people to go on to another county. And so then we are having a hard time finding good people to work here. So if
That's a
we,
practice that's been going on for many years here.
well, but if we don't at least keep pace, then
I don't think you're gonna overcome that practice ever, really. I mean, you're talking about large urban areas that have a lot more money at their disposal than we do. And really, you can make a lot of justification for that if you have millions of people under your jurisdiction versus 27,000, you know.
The problem is actually inflation.
Yeah, that's-
We'd have to figure out an inflation rate of getting money in to cover the cost of inflation. So
Our county revenue has increased because on the property tax side, the EAV has gone up.
Yeah.
We hope that will continue. Some of that's based on the farmland assessment, that's probably the biggest part of it. Our revenue for sales taxes has gone up. We do have at our disposal, which we cannot overlook, the fact that we have the authority to increase the sales tax that we have right now. At 1/4%, we could go to 1/2%.
well,
I don't think we wanna do that. I'm not advocating that we do that. I'm just pointing out, yeah, there's things
I think
that will affect our revenue.
you're probably gonna continue to see an increase in sales tax because inflation at the retail level is substantial. And so along with that,
I think I read somewhere it was like 6%, isn't
all I know is every time we get
Across the
something
board.
in, the prices have gone up.
it? Yeah.
So, you know, you will see,
it's a hardware store problem.
I think that there's a lot of figures being circulated, but 5, 6, 7% inflation is what most
mean-
people seem to be.
you're gonna be getting,
Again, that's not sustainable. It's gonna have to change. The American people are gonna have an opportunity to speak up on that in November of this year, and we'll see what the results of that are when it happens. But here again, here we are today, we gotta do what we gotta do today. We can't wait till then. I think what you're suggesting, Lyle, makes sense, that we consider the sheriff separately, and maybe we should go ahead and get the others, come to some agreement on the other 3 individuals. The circuit clerk, we're doing that for 2 years. That would be part of our motion. And the other 2, the county clerk and the treasurer, would be for 4 years.
We can do that.
yeah, because the circuit clerk is out of sync. She actually gets, she's not being elected this time. She gets elected in 2 years, so that at that time would be able to set her salary.
There was a reason that happened, which escapes me, the county clerk probably could tell us if we need to know.
I believe we got off kilter with her when the elected official salaries were frozen so many years ago, and then when they were setting clerk and treasurer and sheriff, because Lisa's can be raised during the middle of her term, they gave her a raise then, and then just continued the cycle of setting hers at that time. But it really should be set when that office begins term, and then it can be raised in the middle of it, if that makes sense. It can't be lowered, it can be raised.
Another thing that we need to take a look at here is that when the treasurer was elected 4 years ago, a decision was made to give that position a lower salary than the clerk was given. Do we want to elevate him back to the same level, salary-wise? If you look at the numbers at the top of the page there, you can see where that. For this fiscal year there, the county clerk is at 64,000, the treasurer's at 62,500. And when you follow that through on the number, on the rest of that page, the treasurer is remaining underneath that same amount, so if that's something we wanna continue, I guess that's fine, but if we wanna get it up on the same level.
About $1,500 a year.
Right.
Or do we do the same as with as I said with the sheriff, where, okay, we get him up there at the end of the 4 years, but bring it up a little more gradually instead of a big bump first.
That certainly is a possibility, and something we can consider.
I like that idea.
I guess what I'm trying to say is we got a number of things in front of us. If we're gonna make progress here, we gotta start coming up with, say, okay, let's take care of this one and that one and go down the line here, so we can arrive at an answer to all this, because otherwise all these questions will mount up and we'll be hitting a brick wall on the thing. And I would expect, if the last time we did this, that the board was in the indication, I would expect that the board meeting this time there'll be a lot of conversation, because every board member will have a different idea on what to do, and so they'll be going round and round and round.
Yeah, we better start it now and get something.
Yeah.
Right.
Something we feel fairly solid about now, or we never get, without having an extra board meeting, that doesn't seem worth it. Is it?
No.
Does it cost money to have a board meeting?
Right.
Well, I guess, Jill, on your flat rate increase for the 2 clerks, was that just figured on like 2.5% increase, or was that?
$17.50 is what they had received previously as a flat rate amount, so I just went ahead and cut that. Up to you guys if you want to change it around. But it roughly comes out to 2.5%.
At this point, as time goes on, it gets to be less percentage.
Just for you.
Yeah.
You haven't noticed a thing today.
So, I guess we break it down by, on the 2 clerks, since they're the same salaries and everything. We
And
were,
the treasurer.
uh,
And the treasurer.
well, why don't we deal with the two clerks first and then the treasurer?
Okay.
Do we think the $17.50 that they've been getting as an increase, just do that for the next, well, the circuit clerk for the next 2 years, the county clerk for the next 4?
Right.
Sound okay?
What was that again?
To go ahead with
Those two,
those two with this proposal here.
yeah. Okay, what are you doing with county treasurer then?
Well, if we're gonna try to bring them up to 71 eventually, then we need to probably deal with that separately.
Sounds good to me.
And if it sounds okay, I'll make the motion.
Let's, why don't we just work these things out and make one motion then?
Okay.
So, I was gonna make a suggestion on the clerk. They're doing this $17.50 the first year, do $1,800 second year, $1,850, and then $1,900 the last year. As you pointed out, the percentage goes down every year if it's the same amount.
In relation, yeah.
Yeah,
This would
that's
help
true.
you mitigate that somewhat. But remember, the circuit clerk is only for the first 2 years of it.
Right.
But the county clerk would be the other 4. I think for the treasurer, if we wanted to get him up to that same level, that's fine. That means we'd be,
A little higher percentage, once you got him on track, like.
okay, well, the last year, instead of 69.5, it's gonna be the same as the clerk's, and that would be 72,900. It can go down. That over the course of the 4 years is 10,400. Okay, he's making 62.5 right now. If you put him at 72.9, that's 10,400 over those 4 years. We can come up with some way of making that an even increase every year if we want to get up to that number.
Up to what number?
72.
Which isn't on here, it's just what he's proposing.
72.9.
What I'm just suggesting.
That would be above the 71.
Yeah, he,
If we did 1,900 more,
Bring it up evenly through the years.
I don't have that right.
Why don't you bring them up equal, 71.3?
Yeah, no,
well, he,
it's 71,150. It's only 100, it's 150 more
71?
for the clerk. In other words, instead of doing 1750 the last year, you're doing 1,900, so that's 150 more. So that means instead of 71,000, it would be 71,150 for the clerk. So that'd be, you'd wanna get that same number.
Need a calculator?
John, you were talking, you said 1750, 1800, 1850, and 1900?
Yes.
Okay, so then for the circuit clerk, that, for the 2 years covering that, she currently makes 64, so that would take her to 65,750.
Yep,
And then the second year would be 67,550.
yep,
Now for the county clerk, currently makes 64, the first year would be 75,750.
Yep.
The second year would be 67,550.
mm-hmm,
The third year would be 69,400.
yep.
And then the fourth year would be 71,300.
You jumped me one time there, too much. Go back again.
71,300. 71,300.
I got 71,150.
Well, 69,
Yeah, 71.
400 plus the 1,900 is 71,300. If you're proposing the 1,750 for the first year, 18 for the second, 1,850 for the third, and 19 for the fourth.
For the third year, it should be 69,350. What number did you have for the third year?
69. She said 69.4 for the third year.
It should be 69,350. If you're doing 1,800
So you have
in
the
the
current
second year,
salary,
you're increasing the numbers underneath it by $50.
you have the current salary at
In the third year, you're
64,000.
increasing them by 100. Cause that was 1,850.
The first, okay, so the current salary is 64,000, you're talking an increase of 1,750 for the first year,
Yep.
which would be 65,750. And
Okay,
then an increase of 1,800 for the next year would be 67,550,
right,
with an increase the next year being of 1,850, which is 69,400, with the last increase being $1,900, which is an increase of $71,300.
well, if what you're saying is right, then the numbers on this page must be wrong. Because 1,850, you know,
She's got a calculator.
what?
She's got a calculator.
The numbers on this page were based on 1,750 every year, okay? And she's saying that brought it to 69,250. I'm saying $100 more that year, so that should bring it to 69,350. And the last year, 150 more than the 1,750, which 1,900, that should bring it to 71,150. So are the numbers, is the 69,250 right or wrong?
No, that's right, because if
Well,
you
then
have,
how can you be $50 difference? I'm not sure I'm with you on that.
$65,750 plus 1,750, 67,500 plus 17,550, 69,250 plus 1,750 equals 7, yeah. The proposal on the sheet is what you're talking about, John? Those are only $1,750 a year.
Right.
And then you're proposing 1,750 plus 1,800, or the 1,750, 1,800, 1,850, and 1,900.
Yeah.
The second one was 50 more,
That's
and the third one.
For the third year, it's an increase of $100 over what's on this sheet, so that's where I came up with 69,350.
Or 71,300.
Is that? Which is right and which
It
is
is
wrong?
71,300 would be what it would come out to.
Yeah.
Okay.
18, yeah.
Math.
Fiscal year 25 would be 69,400. Going with 1,750, 1,800, 1,850, and 1,900. So you go, yeah, 67,550, and 1,850 onto that would be 69,400. And then 19 onto that would be 71,300. Yep.
So we're saying that we'd have to get the treasurer up to 71,300, is that right?
You do $2,200 a year, that would get him
Yes,
How much?
2,200,
every year, 2,200.
if that's your goal.
Okay.
And then to get the sheriff up to approximately what he would like, it would be $42.90 per year. And I just rounded things off to make the math easier.
Well, I'm not opposed to those numbers if we can afford them, that's my only concern. It seems like quite a bit.
So you're going with the sheriff on proposal two?
You have to understand, and one,
No, this is a county, this is what he was requesting, because then that gets him to where he makes a little bit more than the lieutenants said. This is what his lieutenants are making.
Right. Well, we
So,
There, right?
that's what he would like, yes.
And what-
We can do
what
whatever we want, but that's what he would like.
Right.
And I'm sure he would not send somebody to follow your car on your way home.
I don't know, he's been staking a lot of people out lately.
I've been putting in some late nights.
Yeah.
So this week, and then you said you go with which price?
It goes more in line with this, but instead of a big jump here, it evens it out throughout.
Put your life on the line.
I guess one way to put a face on some of it, Jill, can you run some of the numbers, with that, show the annual cost and the cumulative cost?
Mm-hmm.
We've got those numbers on this page, but get them updated, right?
Yeah, I have that.
Does the FOP renegotiate every 3 years?
Yeah.
No,
There's some contracts in my contract right this year.
so really by 2026,
So are we comfortable with the
that's gonna be an increase.
circuit clerk, the county clerk, and the treasurer then? With what John has suggested, 1750, 1850, 19.
They get up to 71,300.
Yeah.
And the treasurer.
What?
That's
So
what I
in
got.
22, they're gonna
The
negotiate.
69.4 and the 71.3.
So the Lyle,
425, so that.
so
Yeah.
I don't know.
Probably 3% higher.
I'm looking. This number here, up here we've increased it by $100, so why don't you increase this by 100? You're increasing it by 100.
Yeah, we wouldn't quite get you there, but we'd at
Well,
least
you've
be
got
closing the gap.
65, 750, plus 1750,
If we keep on this pace, then
which takes you to 69,250,
you're still gonna make more either which way.
Right.
and then you're 69.
If we keep it on this, then it's, look at the first 2 years, it's still, the gap is a little bit closer.
I think I'm beginning to understand the cumulative effect from the prior year.
Yeah.
put your life on the line.
That's much less.
So I had to write that.
Like to see, because that would get you,
To me, it's right?
If I do it, so he was saying,
Not saying he's right, I'm just saying.
So,
Sheriff, you're basing a lot of these numbers though on a 3% raise a year, I don't know, how are we gonna do that?
so this rate, that doesn't mean that much more. So he's making more than I am per hour.
right, so we would go. That's how much more.
I would be
Okay. Yeah.
at that rate. Basically, it's 2% more than what he is. That's what I'm saying, I'm not asking for minimum.
We need to do one of these others though.
Yeah.
And if we're gonna make a motion, we probably have to get every one of these.
So it'd be equitable if like the first year would be 10%, and then the following years would be approximately 2.5%.
I would just print a new one of these out with those changes.
Yeah, cause I just
Okay,
have
that'd be
to
the
check
ask.
on what he had,
Okay.
2%.
Oh. No, 10% the first year to get
Yeah,
him
that's what I thought you said.
above the
10%.
lieutenant's salary.
And that's where I was wanting to
Wow.
get there eventually.
Did you just get a quick raise?
On paper.
That would be 2% of what.
So what are we looking at for the sheriff now?
Well, I don't know.
Okay. We've got the clerks and the treasurer down.
That's because they have to be paid 10% higher than the highest paid. Deputy. So it's all Shane's fault,
What's on the scale?
right?
No, it's just on the scale.
On the scale, the highest step.
Yeah. I thought it was Shane as well.
No, but it's on
But
the
it's on
step.
step, yeah.
We can still blame it on him.
He said he's only got 2 years left.
Oh, stop. Not that old.
Him to take early retirement.
I think he could retire now, he's at the age. But he just loves his job so much. Actually, I think if he was in an Impala versus the truck that he's got, he probably would have quit last month.
You get an old Impala?
We've got a couple. I drove one when I went back to the road. I didn't mind it. Good times.
So, I guess you're not liking my idea of evenly doing it, you'd rather have a bigger book at the beginning.
I think it makes it more equitable, sooner. Because by that 26 year, they're gonna have another contract negotiation, and then that's going to further, widen that gap. Like I said, I'm not asking for the middle, just to be more than what he was.
So whose budget does the sheriff's salary come out of?
General,
Where?
the general fund. All their salaries.
Not that we would do that.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say it.
Okay.
my feeling is this, anyone that puts their life on the line for other people should be making what he's asking for, if not more, which I wish we could.
I don't think there's any disagreement with that part, but it gets back to what, we only have so many dollars to work with.
Well, what's our safety tax? Every time I mention that, oh, I can't do that.
Well, that may be what we're faced with. I keep telling you, this is unsustainable, we're just heading down a rocky road to oblivion. So I'll jump on the cart and away we go.
Well, nothing's for sure, John, you know?
Well, I can't imagine the deputies are gonna come in here and say, we wanna take a pay cut.
Hopefully we don't have to cut any, but it would probably substantially slow the rate of adding new deputies with all the inflation.
Well, that's what you're looking at, if we approve what he's asking for here, it's a likelihood that you'll lose a deputy or two. I mean, or there'll be some other cut has to be made in order to accommodate it. I mean, with any of these raises that we're making, that's what, you're giving a budget to that department with that salary. According to the state constitution, that has to be done. You can't pay less, you can't pay more. That's what it's gonna be during that term. So if there's a problem in paying it, the cut has to come someplace else in order to free up the money. Maybe they'll be driving their vehicles longer on the road. Maybe the barrels on their guns will be crooked and fire the bullets. I don't know.
If you're looking at flat amounts to keep above lieutenant, you could do 5,000, 5,000, 3,000, 3,000. If you're wanting to stay above that lieutenant pay.
So the first year it wouldn't quite get it, well, the first year
would be,
a little below.
a little below. Second year they break even, but then the third and the fourth it would be above.
You're looking at the on the
It'd be
page
like
what he
$100
gave you.
less the first year. break
That's
even the
based
second.
on a 3% raise every year? That's not right.
We don't really know what it's gonna be,
Yeah.
since we gotta negotiate this year, but it's been 2.5. Just thinking on the high side of 5, or the high side of 3.
But then you gotta figure steps.
Well, from the highest step deputy is what the contract says, so out of the highest step there is available for deputies, the sergeants have to be 8% above that, and the lieutenants have to be 10% above that. So if we don't agree to add any more steps, it'll be based off of percentage.
Would take 2 years instead of 4 years, is that agreeable for you?
What do you do?
Like she said, 4,000, what was it you said?
Well, the first, if you did 5,000, 5,000, 3,000, and 3,000, so then the first year you would approximately be $400-ish less still, but then the second year would be about even, the third year you would be above, and the fourth year you would be above.
get you there a little quicker, but not all at once.
Sure.
And what's the benefit to us to do it that way?
You're talking, if you're talking like
Spread
Lyle
our-
did, 4290, so you're talking approximately $18,000,
It helps you
and
adjust your
this
budget
way
each
you're
year a little
talking,
bit, instead of
16 to
having a big
$60,000
adjustment.
savings overall. Quick math.
And hopefully then, as inflation, then our income gets greater also, if there's gonna be.
Do you want me to make up one with the changes, and then we can come back to it, if you'd like?
Yeah, let's do that and have the cumulative numbers on there too.
Sure.
I'll do that.
That way you can move forward on work on it.
So that 5533 would be off of these numbers.
The number that she gave? Okay, so if you started your first salary.
I don't think so.
So instead of, so you 85, 80, whatever that comes to. Well, okay, yeah, so this would increase by 5 cents. 86. That'd be 93 there. I think that's what she said, that she's gonna bring it all figured out. We're still gonna end up, I think, around this number, I think. It's just how we get there.
Let's see that.
So somewhere around that would be our final number, it's just how we get there is what we're discussing.
I think if we make the sheriff's salary high enough, we'll get more candidates on the ballot to run for sheriff, won't we?
No,
That's what you want.
no, we want you.
Never hurts to have another candidate on the ballot, that keeps you
Yeah, I
working
just,
hard for it.
Newton County's got 3 on the ballot. 2 are from the sheriff's office currently. One is the captain and one is the lead investigator.
After the election, that makes it hard to work with people.
Be tense. Be like what, was it Macon County?
Yeah.
That dealt with that? Mike, was it Mike Root and Chubby Brown?
Root initially lost, and then there was a recount. He won.
It was overturned, so.
But during that time, he got moved to the night shift. He was the EMA director, so,
Oh, was he?
yeah.
So he went from investigations back to night shift?
Yeah.
When he lost?
And he lost the recount, and he won, and now he's the sheriff.
Wow.
Yeah.
Monday.
I was at a conference with him, he got the call saying, you're being moved to night shift, then taking off the EMA.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a problem with retaliating like that, because when there's a recount, then you set the precedent to do it.
Right.
Ray.
I think we're gonna have a lot of fun at this board.
So clear the calendar for the whole day?
Might not be a bad idea. Then we get Amanda to go out and get lunch for us or something.
That's all they do. Yeah.
If the county's paying for it, it's gotta be steak, right? Or John's paying for it, that's right, we don't have it in the budget for the county.
Somebody had it.
Everybody's gonna chip in $20 and she keeps the overage.
Doesn't surprise me anymore. Yeah. Could be.
Just covering up the raffles and poker runs.
Well, I guess while she's doing that, did we decide for, we did decide 2,200 for the treasurer, right? Just a flat rule.
We tentatively, always, yeah, I think we're gonna see what the net effect is, what she comes back with, if it's a amount of what we decided. I figured out why, I think I figured out why I had the wrong numbers down here, but I'm blaming it on my aging brain.
Yeah, that's a good thing to blame it on.
Might as well,
I'm close enough behind you that.
blame it on something.
I'm gonna make sure that she includes the treasurer. I'm gonna make sure that she includes the amount for the treasurer.
See, you already got me in the boxes already.
How's everything down
Everything down there
Just move my drum set to a different room.
doesn't change much.
there?
Is that a good thing?
I think so. We don't want it to change much anyway. It's quiet.
Yeah.
Too quiet.
Yeah, maybe we'll get some investors and build a 40-house subdivision.
We don't need it. We get tired, then maybe 3. We probably have an occupancy of 50% not paying their rent. So what do we do?
No, you make them high-end houses.
Oh. Is that what an argument is?
Actually, if you go to an ARGA, the houses that have been built have been, yeah. They have been high. But you had a couple of people that, BAC sold, it was an employee-owned company. And there was some people that their buyout had a couple $1 million. Because every employee got part of that buyout.
What company was this?
BAC, the Paxton, or?
I don't know.
Down that way anyway, but yeah, it was an employee-owned company and somebody else offered to buy it, they decided to sell it. Some of them long-term employees that have been there 30 years, they got $10 million.
What were they, BAC?
I don't know what the B was, or, yeah, Baltimore Airport.
They made cooling towers. I was one of their bigger customers.
Go to bed early instead of partying it so much.
Yeah, I know. I'm a party animal.
Burn her animals, party all night.
Right, that dumb dog. She gets me up too early.
You know, one thing we could consider too is we could consider giving the sheriff all these raises and then the deputies, we'll buy them some horses, they can ride horses.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, there you go.
Then you wouldn't have to put out.
Somebody going 100 miles an hour.
Which is always such a pinch to.
We'll take,
They take a lot of horses.
take part of the county farm out here and put it in hay so they can go out there and graze.
You're always thinking,
Absolutely.
Yeah, but then you gotta build a shed for them by their house to store their horse. So you would have local law enforcement, because they wouldn't go much outside of their town.
All these large urban area towns and that have all police force on horses. Why should we be any different, right?
You don't wanna be like big towns, let's get Buffalo.
And horses in Chicago. I think that's the only town in Illinois that has police force.
How large is the horse patrol?
I'm not really sure, but I know they have those.
Yeah.
They primarily deploy them in the loop for special events.
So it gives them an advantage point above the crowd. And if you get a wall of horses coming at you, you're less likely to fight that than a wall of people. Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if they don't train those horses to kick too.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Wow.
I don't know, do they make a bulletproof vest for a horse?
I don't think so.
They make them,
armor.
well, yeah, and medieval times.
Yeah.
I think they make bulletproof vests for dogs. So, do I need to come and get something to prepare for Monday from you, or?
No, I'm just gonna talk to you guys. I'll have some stuff for you.
Okay, we're already face to
Thank
face.
you.
Sure, yeah.
You and him might not be.
Well, I don't know, probably, well.
That helps, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jill.
They said if you raise them.
Done. So the top one is their current salary, the second one is the proposed salary of the 1750, 1800, 1850, 1900. And then for treasurer, 22 across the board, sheriff, the 5, 5, 3, and 3.
We don't have the treasurer right now, yeah, wait a minute.
Yeah, it's on this.
Which the cumulative cost over the 4 years would be around $35,650.
You got it?
You need one, let me know. I might give you one, I'm sorry. Here.
Really, when you look at the cumulative cost versus cumulative cost of the last 4 years, it's not that much more of a cumulative cost. So even if we stayed on pace with what it was, we would still have.
some of that's due to the fact that you've taken the circuit clerk out of the picture.
Well, that's true. Well,
Yeah, I took her out the last 2 years because we don't,
Okay, yeah.
okay.
but if you were to add her back in, you know, be 1850, 1900.
Not quite another 4.
Okay, so we got this in front of us. Does anybody have any further discussion about it? Any questions? And now we can entertain a motion to move forward. Send it to the board for approval. Tear them apart.
I move that we set the salaries as proposed on the latest sheet here, on the revised sheet.
My second.
Would you name them, each one?
This one
Do
right
we
here.
need to name it?
I think referencing the sheet ought to be sufficient.
So the
Identifying-
salaries.
Otherwise, you're gonna have to read all the numbers.
Ma'am?
We'll have a separate resolution for each one at the board meeting, just so you guys know, because there has to be. So just wanted to throw that out there, because it'll be listed individually under.
Yep. I think for,
Can we pass them all at once, or do we have to pass them individually?
I believe they could be all passed as the policy and procedure committee. I mean, that's what you guys have done with resolutions in the past, but they'll be listed individually on the, agenda, and then everyone will have an individual resolution with each one.
are there any other questions or comments on the motion? Seeing none, call the roll, please, Amanda.
Aaron's,
Yes,
Alt,
What are we voting on, what figure now?
so we're voting
The
on
second page.
this here. Right
The
here.
one she just gave you.
That's where, these what,
Instead of this
yeah,
one here.
that's revised that we would
Sheriff's
use.
salary, and this is the treasurer's salary. This appears county clerk and circuit clerk.
Yeah, that's the circuit.
Clerk comes up to here, and then the county clerk.
These two figures here.
Yeah.
One in the poll.
Would you say it is a percentage increase mainly for each month?
Well, they're all different with what we've done, because we're trying to bring the county treasurer's salary up to a certain point, the sheriff's up to a certain point, so they're different percentages. The two clerks was about 2.5%. Well, actually, no, because that increases, well, yeah, it'd be about that.
I'm gonna abstain.
Okay.
Hard,
Yes.
Awful,
Yes.
Sure,
Yes. Okay, that motion passes. We'll have some interesting discussions at the board meeting. In the meantime, you all have the sheet. You can study it over. Please do so that we're prepared as we can be to defend it or change it or argue about it, whatever at the board meeting.
You'll probably be standing up there a while, John.
I'll go sit down.
Put your chair up there.
There's no law that says I have to stand.
That's right.
All right, next we're gonna get to an update on the sexual harassment training for 2022. Have we got anything started yet?
I got a hold of Ben through IC, RMT, and the in-person training, he's trying to get scheduled. It looks like right now it's gonna be closer to June, but he did give me another option, that we could do the training in-house. So I'm still working with Ben on the, training portion. There's also the portal that he's getting us set up on, so we could do the online training like we did before with those McKnight.
Okey-doke, so we'll have an update at next month, and hopefully know where we're headed.
Yep.
Okay. All right, next we get back to this county ordinance on raffles and poker runs. As I'm sure many of you recall, at our last board meeting, there was a lot of time wasted talking about what we had put together and different ideas and so forth, one of which was that it should only apply to bars, another one was that there shouldn't be any fee. I'm not sure if there weren't some other ideas advanced as well, but the net result was sending it back here to the committee. I've run it all through my head, and I've come to the conclusion that the ordinance that we presented last month is a good one, and the way it should be presented again. I'm not in favor of making any changes. And one of the reasons is that this ordinance doesn't only apply to bars, it applies to everything that's identified in it, and it provides a protection of such to every resident of the county for every raffle or poker run that they might want to become involved in, not just something that's run under the auspices of some bar. So I don't think that limiting this to bars is a good idea. I think it should continue just as we have it, because it's all inclusive. It mirrors the state statute, which anybody getting a license has to follow anyway, so why would you wanna have it to be less or different? They gotta do it according to what the state requires. They're doing the same thing here. So my idea is to leave it the way it is and send it back to the board for approval, but
It's bad law.
Well, yeah, but we have to,
I mean, when it comes down to poker runs, as an example, and there was another place in here too, you know, every place that the poker run stops is supposed to have a copy of the license from the county. Well, if you're over in the Capri area and you travel 8 miles on a poker run, you can be in 3 different counties. So how does that work?
I guess you have to see what the ordinance is for every county, but you have to have a state license as well. It's no different than the state license.
I thought they'd have to deal with, we gotta deal with Iroquois.
Okay, so if somebody gets a license from Champaign County or Ford County and the poker run comes to Iroquois County, do we say, okay, we accept, because it's the place that it ends is the place that has to be licensed, if I read it correctly. So if it ends up in a bar in Kankakee County, do we accept their license here?
You're asking me a question, I don't have an answer for it. I would imagine, as with a lot of ordinances and laws, there are situations that might occur that could pose great difficulty in interpretation and administration. And maybe this is one of them. But like I said, what we have here mirrors the state statute, and if you're gonna get a license, you have to follow the state statute, so you're not doing anything different here.
But the state license covers the whole state, and ours covers the county.
There
and
isn't
that's
a
where-
state raffles license, it's
Okay,
up to the
so-
local government, that's why we have to pass.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. But with bingo, their license is good, that's a state license, so.
Make it too big a deal on it.
Have these,
Keep it simple.
places that have been running poker runs in the past, have they just kind of overlooked this, or did they not know about it, or?
We didn't have we don't have an ordinance for it.
Okay, so they just ran poker runs,
Illegally.
yeah.
People run raffles illegally then, if you look at it.
Everyone that's been run since this law was passed has been illegal.
In Iroquois County jurisdiction.
Yeah.
How long has this law been on the books?
I think 2014, I think, maybe 2012, I can't remember for sure. And it's something that we didn't pass anything, because when you first read the statute, it says that the county may establish an ordinance. So when you read that, it says, okay, may, good, we don't have to do it.
Yeah.
However, it says that anyone conducting a raffle or poker run must hold a license. So that's where it reads that we have to have this ordinance if they're going to be legal in our county.
Yeah, bad law because it's from the state.
Yeah, we've established that, but we gotta do it for Iroquois County.
Yeah. I'll make a motion.
I also at the last meeting invited any board members that wanted to come to this meeting and voice their opinions about how we should put this together, so you can see who's here and who isn't.
Right.
I don't know if Mr. Zumwalt isn't speaking, so I don't know if he's wanting to say anything about it.
You wasn't at the last meeting.
No, I'm not
Well,
finding
to
it
answer your
now.
question, I would say, to answer your question, I'd say if it goes through Iroquois County, even though it went to other counties, your establishment ought to have a license, no matter what county it's in. I don't know what it'd have if you go out of state, maybe the people out of state would have to get one from Indiana.
But the way the law is written, it has to come.
They're not worried about anything that state, they're right, that's.
Right, but this is what we're passing, the way it's written. Where it ends is where it has to be licensed, and a copy of that license has to be at each place. So you have the potential of another county giving a license and then distributing it throughout our businesses. Is that acceptable, that we accept that license, or do we require them to get their own license?
I'd say you go to your county and
Your
get
own
your
county.
license, no matter where the thing starts or ends.
But that doesn't follow what's written.
I follow what the county has, because that's what you're interested in.
Well, that's what we're passing, is
What's
what,
holding your license, isn't it, the county?
but that's what we're passing, is, and what it says for the county is that it comes from whatever county it ends in.
Well, it'll be up to the sheriff to apprehend those people, and then it'll be up to the state's attorney
You're
to
gonna work real hard on
prosecute.
that, aren't you?
Yeah.
That'll be the top priority.
Well, and
I'm
that's
sure you go
just
after
it,
everyone with the fireworks.
you know,
Through without
it's,
Why would the
I
county?
understand why we have to do this, but it's stupid to do it when it's not gonna be enforced.
Can I say something? I used to do a lot of these for the motorcycle group I was in. We did these on a yearly basis. It is difficult enough to put the logistics together to do this benefit run for someone without adding additional permits, you know, cause when we ran it, we covered as many, we went through four counties and sometimes 2 states, cause we go into Indiana as well. I think to add the difficulty of trying to get a permit for every county when the law only states that it has to be where they end, I think you're complicating something that's already difficult enough to do when it's these are done for charity, for, you know, somebody's family's having, it's done for benefit for somebody, and it's just adding a whole level of difficulty that doesn't need to be there.
And exactly,
The
it
law
shouldn't be there at
period.
all.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, my question is, what kind of a problem will it create for us as a county if we don't have an ordinance?
Well, no, I think I think because of the way the law's written, I think you need to do the ordinance, but I would just do it as easy, as simple as possible. I wouldn't add any more requirements, obligations, just, and, you know, I don't know if you could put it on the website that, you know, somebody could fill it out on the website to ask for a permit. I don't know. That, I'm not gonna get into that part of it, because I don't know how hard that would be for our webpage and how that works, so. But it's just.
Well, in some place in here, I saw it said something about running in conjunction with liquor license. As a part of the liquor license, can the liquor license be liquor and raffle license?
No, they would have to be separate, but, the reason why it's running in conjunction is because of the expiration date. We were gonna set it for 1 year, and it's gonna run in conjunction with the same as the liquor license. So I don't have to worry about 37 different expiration dates. It expires on June 30th, begins
Okay.
July 1st.
But there again, with the poker run, the people running the poker run have to have it. But then where it terminates, or if they.
They could run
rent the place-
5 poker runs with one
Right,
payment.
but wherever it terminates has to be at a licensed facility also, the way this reads.
We took that out,
Well,
didn't we? The license, because you didn't want to have
Well,
the fairgrounds have a license.
it is underlined, but it's not out. There's notes on here, but they haven't been corrected.
I don't
You're
know.
not looking at the right copy.
I don't know what you're
Well, this
looking
is what was
at.
just handed to me today. That's what they got.
I don't have that one.
So, you know, if we're supposed to vote on something that isn't correct, then that's not good
Yeah.
either.
Yeah,
Right, I believe
The
you guys
old
took
one.
that out, at the.
that was taken out in the
meetings ago?
conversation I had with Jim Devine. He and I agreed to
Well-
take that out. And the way it was presented at the last board meeting, that was not included.
Well, and you got, this won't work, how about,
It's from the last
you know,
time.
No, that's,
we're voting on something that,
you're looking at the wrong thing.
okay, well, how are we supposed to vote on it if we've got the wrong thing?
It's not that I have an updated version.
Yeah, that's the old one, I remember that.
Apparently, I don't have a copy here of the one that
She
we had
doesn't
at
have
the
it.
last meeting. I've got a copy of the one you got.
Amanda doesn't have it yet.
You need a copy of the one that was presented at the last meeting?
I guess so.
Okay.
Or the corrected one?
That's the one that was presented at the last meeting.
I can tell you what the corrections are.
Oh, and we're supposed to believe you?
If you go to page 3, you got it around where it says date of birth, that remains in there, that wasn't taken out. On page 5, it's the same thing, date of birth stays in there. The part down below about moral character, that's in the state statute, so we didn't take that out. On page 6, we changed under section 6, in paragraph 1, we changed from 30 days to 45 days. Because 30 days isn't enough period of time. If somebody came in and say the day after the county board meeting and it was gonna be more than 30 days till the next board meeting, which oftentimes is the case, then we wouldn't be able to comply with that. So
Is there,
it's 45 days.
is there any way to have it expedited, because say somebody wanted to do a fundraiser for someone that's ill, which is covered in here, but they need to do it quickly because the person is ill.
I brought that up about, in fact, it says right in there, how about approval by the county board chairman? Right now, it says approval by the county board, okay? It was decided to leave it as, that the county board would approve it within 45 days. If you wanna give the county board chairman that authority, I believe that's possible, but it would have to be something like that. If somebody came in here, you know, and then the county board chairman would have to leave his home and drive over here and review the application and make the decision to approve it, then he'd have to drive back home again.
At P&P, the motion was to change it to county board chairman. Did that change during the meeting?
No, well, yeah, based on the conversations I had with Jim Devine,
Okay.
at the county board meeting, it was for me to go and talk to him about it, which I did between that time and we had the board meeting, so.
Because then the other part of that motion is to, for page 7, section 7, paragraph D, remove that paragraph
That's
subject
the one
to.
that Lyle
yeah.
was talking about, right, and now,
Okay.
Mr. Devine agrees with taking that out. On page 8, all of those question marks there are the same thing, that's part of the state statute, and so that's why we decided to leave them in there as is.
So the main problem was, from our last meeting, was they just want this to be the bars, right, is what they want.
That was the main issue, yes, and my feeling on that is that this is something that provides protection to residents and so that anyone running a raffle or poker run doesn't abscond with monies or is conducted illegally in any other way. As far as awarding it, the winnings and so forth, they have to follow this stuff, so I think it protects every individual in the county.
Well, the people I talked to, their feelings were, if I don't trust the people doing the raffle, I'm just not gonna buy a raffle ticket.
Not everybody looks at it that way.
Well,
I've sold enough raffle tickets to tell you that a lot of people will just dig in the pocket and give you the money, whether they
well, that's,
know what the cause is or not. And, you know, I think, again, we're, as our, you know, being stewards of the operations and activities in the county, I think it's our job to provide some kind of protection for that. That's my thinking as to why this should apply to the whole county and not just to a bar, okay? That's my response to that.
and yet, you can waive the bond, which is your only protection.
If everybody in your organization signs off on it.
If you have a criminal organization, of course they're gonna sign off on it.
That's what the state law says. so-
You go into criminal suit.
Well, there is nothing in here that says that it's all punishment on people who haven't done anything wrong. There's nothing punishing, you know,
Well, pays to be correct and do everything right.
no, because this is making people that have not done anything wrong, punishing them. Because they're having to get the license, which is in the bond,
Turn to section 6. It's at the bottom of, the 3rd page. The county board chairman shall review all raffle license applications and all poker run applications. County board shall within 45 days from date of application accept or reject. If you wanna give the county board chairman the approval to approve it right on the day of application, I guess that, we can change that wording to do that.
Where is that, John?
it's on,
On the bottom of the third page,
Page
section
5.
6, license issuance.
Oh, okay.
John Townsend. Page 5. third sheet, page 5.
I didn't say the page number, I said.
You said page 3.
Third page. That's not page 3.
Well, if we just have the county, say the county board chairman can approve it, it doesn't have to come to the county board, why then we cut out a lot of talking and yakking at a county board meeting. And,
The liquor licenses come to the county board for approval.
yeah,
Yeah, like, as Brian pointed out, they expire on the end of June, so during the month of June, they all come in and they pay their money, and she presents a list,
right,
which comes before the board. When the board approves it, then I sign all the licenses and they get sent out to everybody on the liquor. So this would be done similar to that, other than if you wanna accommodate what Lyle was saying and give the chairman the authority to do that. Like I said, if somebody comes in and wants the thing right now, so then the county clerk has to call up the chairman. What if the chairman is out of town or sick or
and call the vice
incapacitated?
chair.
The vice chair.
Yeah.
You know, he may not be able to drop everything he's doing and rush right over to sign the approval.
Well, but
I mean, he can do it.
the whole board was not aware of this law, so when somebody goes to run a raffle and then at the last minute they find out, oh, we're supposed to have that, there needs to be some provision to allow them to have it. Otherwise, you're gonna make them criminals.
Probably should send out a certified letter to all of
And you know every organization there is, every church group, every Boy Scout group, every,
I know,
Not every raffle is a fundraiser either. There's some places where people have raffles where no money changes hands.
and that they still would have to get this. No. Why not?
Because it's all, this is for when money changes hands. You buy a raffle ticket.
how about a World Series pool?
I don't think that's a raffle.
For the game of chance.
There's a definition in the beginning here that should answer that question. Tells you what, about all the different organizations that apply.
Well,
Tells you the definition of a poker run and definition of a raffle. If the player pays or agrees to pay something of value for a chance, okay? So if you have a raffle where somebody does not
Kind of what we
pay
do.
for it, that doesn't come under this.
I know, that's why I called Tom
How
Miller.
about a little
Okay, get back
50-50
to me.
raffle, that basketball game,
And I told him, if we do this,
not every school
make
has
sure
one.
everybody knows that it's a state law and to call your state rep. And then when all the state reps start getting called
If
on.
they're gonna have a 50-50 raffle run in a basketball game, they can come in and pay $5, and that's good for the whole
The
season.
freshman class don't even have
That'll
driver's
be a way
license
to
yet, they
change
can't make it.
It's good for the whole
Figure out
season.
your point now. You gotta go by what.
Good for the whole season, huh?
They're listed right here on the first page, Charlie, educational organizations.
Jeez.
Folk education, they wouldn't qualify.
Well, we do know it's a state law, we can't change that. We have to do what we gotta do to protect the people here of Iroquois County. So let's work on that. We know it's a bad law. Let's
It's
get
an
it going.
Illinois law, so.
Let's get it going.
It isn't necessarily a bad law, there may be examples of where it's difficult to enforce or apply. But I'm sure there's a lot of places in the state over the years where people have run raffles and there've been problems associated with them, and that's probably why we have a statute for it. And I think the same thing would apply here in this county. There's nothing to say that Lyle Behrens isn't gonna go out and run a raffle and stick half the money in his own pocket and then give the other half to Barbara Awful.
Is that been done?
You know?
If that's what we wanna do for a raffle, and if we tell the people that's what we're gonna do, then we can do that.
Maybe.
The state pockets half the lottery money.
It's a matter of providing protection to the people and citizens of the county, that's all.
Yes, let's get there.
As I said earlier, it's my feeling that the way we had the ordinance presented at the last meeting, that's what we should be looking at. The only thing I can say is, if you wanna change it to give the county board chairman the authority to immediately approve an application, that's fine.
I would
Otherwise, I don't see any reason to change any of this.
I would think at the very least, yeah, that needs to happen, the county chairman and or his designee, in case you have to be out of town.
Or I might be out running my own raffle.
Maybe, and that's fine, as long as you got a license. And no, we're not gonna waive the bond for you.
Well, we have to go forward,
Yeah.
and, you know, we sit here looking at this, and, well, this, that, and it has to come up to the board, so.
Mhm. Look what we're going through in this little committee, do you imagine what it's gonna be like?
And,
Where do you wanna argue it, here or there?
Well, you're gonna argue it either way. I don't mean you, but look at us.
so. Yes, make a motion that we present this.
With or without the change of the county board chairman being able to approve.
Well, that, I think that should be included, yeah. And that,
Designated.
that we approve this with the, understanding that in section 6, number 1, we strike the county board shall within 45 days from the date of application accept or reject a raffle or poker run license application, and replace that with the county board chairman.
And designated.
Huh?
And his designated person.
Yeah, and his designated person.
Or
Or stated, yeah, accept or reject raffle or poker run license application. That's right here, I mean,
Yeah, okay.
okay.
I second that.
anybody else have any questions or comments on the motion? Since we're talking about an ordinance here, would you call the roll, please, Amanda?
Aaron,
Are we voting on the whole thing or the
We're
amendment?
voting on the motion that was made by Mr. Bard.
Okay, so that was to pass it with the amendment?
With the amendment, yeah.
Abstain.
Alt,
Yes.
Barr,
Yes.
Awful,
Yes,
Sure.
Yes. Okay, because of the hour, we're gonna pass by on the executive session, we'll move to appointment. You have that thing for-
Mm-hmm. Someone.
Pass this around. We're required to reappoint Mr. Yerger to the assessor's position, and part of it is his certification, which is now accomplished, you can see that, so we'll be bringing his name forward at the board meeting. Other than that, I don't have any other appointments at the moment. We do have a couple items of correspondence that you might want to look at. I think everybody either has received one that what Barb has or will receive it if you have it. Monthly notification from our friends down in Danville. And then we come to claims. Mr. EMA has submitted some claims for us here. Sheet that went out to everybody didn't have this service contract from Hyper Reach on it. Is that on there?
It's in the back. There was the two
I
phone,
got those.
two phone bills, gas, and then Hyper Reach.
For some reason, I only saw the ones on the front. Anyway. Is there a motion to approve the claims and send them to the county board for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Are there any questions or comments regarding these claims? Would you call the roll, please, Amanda?
Aaron,
Yes.
Alt,
Yes.
Barr,
Yes.
Awful,
Yes.
Sure.
Yes. Is there any old business to come before the committee this morning? Is there any new business to come before the committee this morning? Is there a motion to have, to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Meeting is adjourned.